Hi everyone, welcome to Meteor Impact 2022. So in this session we will discuss how we can use Meteor to tackle complex digital transformation projects, usually enterprise projects. And a little bit more about myself. My name is Mehdi. I'm the founder of the Emiketic agency. We are specialized in developing JavaScript and Meteor apps for enterprise customers since 2015. We also do projects for startups. You can reach me at this address email or on the Meteor forums, and during this session I will be available on the question and answer channel where we can chat together if you have any questions, since it's a recorded session. So let's talk a little bit more about the definition of digital transformation. So in any project, we have different steps to follow in order to ship a project to a client. But digital transformation projects are very specific in the sense that they can be complex, or they can have an existing set of practices within a company that we need to reproduce. And based on our experience over the years, we have developed several large digital transformation projects, on average 3 to 4 projects per year, and some of them can even stretch over more than a year. So we have identified the following items that we wanted to share with you. So the first of which is the notion of scoping use cases and data models. This is what we see in any software project, but it could be a bit different for digital transformation projects. How to detect complexity, especially when it's implicit. How to understand the front-end requirements, because usually digital transformation is a lot about front-end, because people are used to other tools like Excel or legacy tools, and they require modern and state-of-the-art front-end, and this could also introduce complexity. Any digital transformation project includes a lot of notions of ACL, access control list, and like how can users access this or that feature. And sometimes we have to deal with real time, and this is where Meteor also is great. So again, before jumping into the presentation, let's redefine together what means digital transformation. Usually a project of digital transformation involves a company, so usually it's a B2B project, or it could be a project developed for a company that will use it with their customers, but usually it's just a B2B or internal productivity tool. It means that the company has already the processes for performing what they need to do. Usually it's either outside of the digital world through paper, or it could be through legacy digital tools like Excel, spreadsheets, and a lot of man-handled tasks. For example, you would have people who would write down data in Excel and then export it to a file, and then somebody needs to send it by email, and then another person has to input to transform. And usually companies at some point they want to increase their productivity, and they hire an agency to transform all that into a fully fledged all-in-one software. So the number one step is, just like in any other software project, is to identify identify our scope, what are the different entities we are dealing with, what's the user journey, what are the different types of users who will be using the software. And for this, it's pretty straightforward. We need to use tools like diagram tool, like DB diagram, for example, and wireframing tools, and this is very classic work. I just need to emphasize that in a large or medium digital transformation project, this must be the first step. We cannot just start coding based on mere specs or specs written on a Word document. As architects, as developers, we need to understand how the system will behave. So this is the number one step. Here, why Meteor is such a great tool, because a mistake that many developers make, I think, is to dive too much into the charting the data model and other requirements without trying to develop as they define these models. So with the Meteor, we can iterate over these notions. So for example, we could draw a data model and then implement it quickly without having to bother to worry about the account system, how is it too soon to define APIs, is it too soon to set up the database. So with Meteor, we do not have to worry about these aspects. We can just like take the first iteration of the data model, let's say the first 3-4 collections, and the first 3-4 user stories, simplify them and code them directly. Meteor will leverage all the rest for us because it's already pre-packaged with interesting tools like the database that is already set up. We don't need to worry about the database. No worries about the API because we have pumps up and method API that are easy to define, and no need to worry about the account system. This way we can deliver feedback quickly to the product owners and the project managers, and maybe adjust the course of actions when we are drawing our data model from the very beginning, and not realize after 3 weeks or 4 weeks that the first data model was not right, and then we need to have to do it. It's important to be able to detect complexity. So the number one reflex is to analyze all use cases and try to understand if there is something that is more subtle or complex than we think, and then try to define it. So this is the most common reflex. Sometimes it's good to have an experienced product owner or product manager with us, because these guys might be able to detect complexity in something that we haven't seen before. For example, we are doing a synchronization with a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is not hosted on a cloud tool with an API for the spreadsheet like Google or like Microsoft. But we need to parse a complex document. So we might think, oh, I know a library to parse Excel files, so it should do it. But then an experienced PO could say, oh no, you need to be careful because this is not a classical column row Excel document. It has, complex structure or cross-defined functions, etc. So this is where experience is good. So analysis, experience, but it's not enough. Practice is extremely important. Even if you are experienced, if you don't implement the first use cases or try to implement them, you're still dealing with theory or background theory with experience. So the advantage again with Meteor, I think, in digital transformation project, we will see some examples later in the session, is that whenever you have suspected complexity, you could quickly do a POC even on a separate app. So sometimes people are too lazy to do a POC because they believe that they will have to reinstall or to reset up a new app from scratch and then go through all the configuration parts. But with Meteor, it's so easy to just start an app with all what we need and focus on our POC and de-risk it. I'll give you an example later. Here's the example. So in this project, this is a system that we have developed for a firm in Europe. So just for the record, we're based in North Africa, in Tunisia, but we develop for customers in North Africa, also in Europe and North America. And France is one of our key markets because we are a French-speaking country. So this firm is a large firm that does project management in the construction industry. So we have developed an integrated system for them over more than a year and a half. And one of the components of this system is a balance sheet tracker. So the balance sheet tracker looks like this, okay? And as you can see, it might look nice, sweet, but any unexperienced product owner would say, oh, it's so simple. But the first thing to do is to analyze the requirements, then to apply your experience, and then to see if there is a need for a POC. So that's exactly what we did here. Let's look at the requirements. For this balance sheet tracker, we have multiple tables across multiple categories. As you can see here, this is one category, and then this is one table, but we have multiple categories. And then each table has its own Excel-like computation rules. So for example, here, some fields can be input fields, and some fields are computed directly based on formulas linked to other cells. So it has computation rules. And another requirement is that it should be up to date on all other client browser, meaning that if we have several users using the finance system, the balance sheet tracker system, they should see data at the same time, in real time, be updated. So this is another requirement. Another requirement is to be able to support multiple units. As we can see here, we can have amounts of money, euros or surfaces, or sometimes special units for the construction industry. And of course, we need input validation. So definitely, it's not just a spreadsheet. It's a very, very custom spreadsheet with ability to save quickly, to save across different tables, etc. So at this point, we thought, okay, so how can we de-risk all these items? So we thought with the product owner, the feedback led to a POC. So definitely the computation rules, like Excel, is one of the most sensitive parts. So we have detected a very interesting NPM package called Hyperformula that does reproduce the behavior of Excel formulas in JavaScript. It's client side and it's also server side. And again, the great news with Meteor is that it's just in a Node.js environment, and it's so easy to use this package, both client side and server side, to do caching, whether we are doing server side computation or actual real-time updates on the front end. So for the client reactivity, we at our agency we use a lot React with Meteor. So for us it was obvious that we needed to develop custom React hooks for these tables, coupled with Meteor's React hooks. One of them is called Use Tracker. It's very famous. It allows you to use data reactively on React. If you are a React developer, you won't even feel you are using Meteor. You're just using a hook that provides data. And then we know that we need distributed reactivity. We know that Meteor has a system for DDP, for read updates, but for writing, we just needed to implement a system to do a debounced autosave system with method calls. And we know that for units and input validation, we just need to do custom React inputs. So we took all these sensitive parts and we did a POC with them on a separate Meteor app. We didn't have to reconfigure or redo the whole thing. We just installed all these dependencies, copy-pasted some code, and then we did our POC. We validated that these tables, that these tables are absolutely feasible in Meteor, and we won't have any issues with infinite refreshing or lags or slow lags. And also, when we needed to validate the ability to do this online, we did a POC by, we took the same POC, deployed it on Meteor Cloud, and then saw that the latency was not that bad. And this allowed us to confirm to the client that this is feasible, okay? So this is a typical approach that we follow to de-risk complex tasks. Another example of complexity is front-end complexity. So people tend to think of front-end as a minor part of a project, but it could be complex. Okay, it could be also heavy. So sometimes people complain about a Meteor app being heavier or slow to load, but actually it's the front-end that is slow to load and not the server app. A way to prove it is just to remove the front-end and demonstrate that the back-end is quite fast actually. So this might be linked to a large UI kit or large libraries. Typically, charting libraries take a lot of volume in the bundle size. And also, we need to understand that whether in our project, if the front end will be coupled to Meteor or not. Because if the front end can be uncoupled from Meteor, maybe it's easier to delegate the front end project or projects to another team or different teams that will do just a simple front-end app. For example, with the React, they will do a React, create React app, Redux app. We will provide the APIs, whether they are RESTful or PubSub or DDP APIs, and these teams can then take a certain part of the work, and we will focus on the Meteor work. So the configuration needs to be understood quickly. Usually, as a rule of thumb, if the front end is light or it's lean, we could do it within Meteor. But if from the beginning we know that the front end project is very large, it's better to do it separately and use Meteor as an API and keep its front end only for a very minimalistic front end, like an admin panel, for example. So this is an example of another project. It's a software that we have been developing and still developing for a payroll system, and an African payroll system. And this application has a lot of screens. So this is the user journey in one of the screens. As you can see, there are about 20 of them here, times at least 10 other models. So it's quite big, you know. If you take it with Meteor directly and within the monolith, maybe it's not the best approach if you don't have the right architecture. So it's interesting to be able to here to first of all, in order to go in an agile way, is to not reinvent the wheel and embrace a mature design system. In our case, we took Ant Design. It's a famous React business design system with a UI kit. We split the project into 3 different React standalone applications, and we gave them to teams that know nothing about Meteor. They will just like develop the React app, and we focused only on the Meteor part. But all the teams had, of course, a shared, you know, UI kit and a storybook to make sure that all the UIs are the same. And Meteor, where it was used just as an API. We only have a screen in Meteor, or let's say a set of pages for administration and configuration for the admins. So let's talk about ACL and access policies. So in most digital transformation projects, you will see that the customer or the project manager within the customer's firm will talk a lot about policies. So who can do what, when, and it's very important for them because usually data is sensitive, especially in financial software. So the paradigm of ACL, access control list, can be complex if you don't have a convention or a guidance or a pre-established well-known systems. So for example, I remember in the past I used to work with a famous Node.js framework that had too many options. None of them was maintained, loosely documented, and you didn't know which package to use or whether to develop your own ACL because it's possible. So it took time to try the first one, try the second one, and then finally do our own custom coupled with an existing one. What I really love about Meteor is in this very aspect is that it's quite, you know, standard. The community has its system, although it's not a Meteor software system. In the past, it used to be called only aligning roles, but in the past couple of years, with the Meteor community packages, we have another package on top of it that is quite maintained, and it's completely integrated with the Meteor account system in a way that ACL and access policies are also compliant with DDP, real time, and with the account system generally speaking. So it's so easy to integrate ACL. I discussed the matter with the client not even a couple of days ago, and I said that, you know, for the same project, when we did a custom ACL a year ago, it took us so much time and it took so many meetings and auditing, etc. But now with Meteor, we just need to supply a JSON file or a JavaScript description file. And in the front-end side, it's so easy to reflect ACL given that we have our hooks in React. So I would say if you have ACL requirements, do not postpone them. Just right from the beginning, use these packages to configure your own system. And if you want also to replicate this a lot of time, you could do your own starter to share with your team if you are in an agency, and this way you won't have to worry about ACL in the future. That's what we did. If you follow our GitHub page with the agency name, I will show it to you later. We have a starter for Meteor and React, including roles and ACL configuration. An example here. So this is a project that we are doing that puts in contact people who are selling car parts and people who are buying car parts as large suppliers, as company suppliers, without having them to know each other. Okay, so the supplier on the right should know that the platform or the reseller of the platform has a customer who needs spare parts for these cars, and on the other hand, the person who is managing the client account knows everything. He knows who's the client, the end customer, knows who the supplier, what's their price, and what's being bought or sold. Okay, so with Meteor, it was so easy to do this. These two screens, given that these two screens were developed already in React, it took only about a day and a half to reflect the SEL and the visibility logic on them. And that's one thing I love about Meteor being agile, because this is an MVP project. Real time. So sometimes in digital transformation projects, you will have customers asking for real-time features. For example, if they're doing logistics, especially if they have a fleet of delivery agents, they need to know where they are, or if the merchandise was delivered or not. So it's cool because if you are doing it from scratch, for example, with Socket.io, you can lose a lot of time for something that has no value. For example, defining your own event, your own verb, your own logic for connection and connection handling, and for what happens when it is disconnected, how do I stream the events, what type of data, etc., etc. So with it shouldn't be that much of a sinkhole of energy, and this is why Meteor is really good for that, with the mechanism of PubSub, which gives an abstraction over all that. And you could use reactive or real-time data as if you are handling a subset of connections. But do not abuse it because developers, especially beginners with Meteor, tend to use DDP for everything, because in the tutorials or the training material, usually we only show how to do a feature with PubSub. But it's not necessarily the case. If you read the Meteor guide thoroughly, you will see that the recommended way is not to use DDP, and not to use PubSub in real time. Use it only when needed. So prefer method calls or even RESTful calls in Meteor. It's not a problem. And when you need real time, then use PubSub, and consider the performance issues also. You need to be able to pull your data efficiently, with an offset, with a certain limit of data. And you can also leverage client-side caching. So it's very important to not really overdo this thing and resist it. Otherwise, you will end up with very heavy app. It happened to me in 2016 with an application that we deployed at a large client, very large client in the UK. We did this project with another team, and they complained to both of us because the app, when it had about 3,000 users, was completely unusable because of the many WebSocket connections due to PubSub. Well, thanks everyone for your time. If you have any questions, again, either on the chat or you can reach out to me on my email address here, and on our GitHub with the same company name, you will find our starter for Meteor with ACL. Thank you.